I'm ready.
So we're going to call to order here for the meeting. It's just after 7. Bless you.
Thank you.
And we're going to start with citizen comments. Anyone have any citizen comments?
Am I a citizen comment?
Yes, you are a citizen comment.
Okay, and do I have to stand up?
Yes, you do.
So I'm Charlie Shackleton. I'm here on behalf of Sustainable Woodstock and the Woodstock Farmers Market and the Naked Table Project. We have a permit to use the middle bridge on Sunday between, I think it's 11 and 3. And we want to be able to, and particularly the farmers market, want to be able to serve like half a glass of locally grown organic wine. And that will be served by a server from either the Woodstock Inn, who is properly, whatever the correct expression is, and either from the Woodstock Inn or Simon Pierce. And it's obviously a sealed off event, and we're looking for a variance to be able to allow to do that.
It seems to always be a nice event, so I move to allow them to serve wine in the rope or the sealed off event the way it's requested.
I'll second.
My only question, Charlie, is so this is in the variance is just on what was requested. This is the Sally Miller application from March 6th where it said no alcohol.
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly.
Sounds good.
Yep.
Anyone else have any questions? Or
Still no fire.
Fine.
we're going to be opposed to a
No
fire.
candles. You mean? Yeah. No candles. No.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hey, thank you guys so much.
Thanks for coming. Anything else? We'll move on to additions and deletions. Any additions and deletions? Which one's the deletion? Oh, okay. Moving on, request for permits. Permit for use of the sidewalk. Change the World Kids. Is anyone here to speak about that?
Yes.
Not that I'm looking over here like I might be.
So we would like a permit to be able to draw with chalk on the sidewalk to raise awareness for one of our biggest fundraisers, Par La Tierra.
Par La Tierra is one of the biggest dinners that we hold, and it raises a lot of money for Change World Kids. It also raises a lot of money for reforestation in Costa Rica and Vermont.
So yeah, like during this process, we're gonna try to not be a nuisance to the public and kind of stay out of people's way as much as we can.
It's always been a lot of fun to see all that on the sidewalk, so I move to allow the Change the World Kids to chalk away
I'll second
as permanent as requested.
Any further discussion? My only question is, it seems like the date here might be the date that was the date of the application, not the date that you guys are going to use it, because it says 7/24/18. I'm giving that date as already.
But here's just 9, 7, and 9.
Okay, gotcha. So, any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Moving on. Police chief's report.
So a couple things that were on my list, but I also see that they're on the agenda for further down with a high street safety issue, so I'll save that for them. And the Central Street Fire Building, otherwise known as the Pie Building, that's on the agenda as well, so I'll save that, whatever comments I have when that comes up. Which brings me to my other notes. So on August 17th to September 3rd, we'll be participating in the Governor's Highway Safety Labor Day DUI campaign. And so there'll be extra patrols out. Just a note about the Governor's Highway Safety as well. Since November of 2017, that grant has made it possible for 68 additional hours, patrol hours in Woodstock from Woodstock police officers that have participated. In addition to that, it paid for the 2 electronic signs that you see on each end of the village. On Thursday, Officer LeBlanc's going to be participating in the Special Olympics Vermont law enforcement officer, cop on top. It's at Dunkin' Donuts in Rutland to raise awareness and funds for Special Olympics. I think they have an officer on top of the roof, and you can they lower a bucket down, you make a donation, and they sit up on the roof for the day. So she's going to be up on the roof. Hopefully she doesn't fall down. On August 28th, Zach's Place is hosting a barbecue for Woodstock Emergency Personnel Appreciation. It's at 1 o'clock. And then today, actually, Officer LeBlanc and Sergeant Swanson is in the audience with us. They met with the youth at Vale Field, part of the Rec Center summer camp program. They showed them the cruiser, gave out some goodies to the kids, so that was went really well. And that's what I have so far. Any questions? Until we get to the high street of the... parking. Before I forget, last but not least, just to let you know, give you an update on the parking. July revenues were up to $14,941. That is about a $2,000 increase over July of 2017. With the credit card usage of the meters increasing up to about 35%, which was about a 10% increase over 2017 last year.
Does that also mean that less tickets are being issued?
Fewer tickets are being issued because there's more compliance because of the credit card meters.
That's terrific.
Any other questions about the meters? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Chief. Village financial report. Are we doing... Did everyone get a copy?
The manager's report?
Yeah. Are we having a manager's report today? Okay. Did everyone get a copy of the financial report?
Mm-hmm.
So we'll move on to old business. So first is High Street safety issues. Is anyone here to speak about that? Chief, you want to lead us off?
Sure. So did you want to read the letter from Mr. Pear? Did he want that read? Was that supposed to be read? I'm not even sure.
Okay.
And then there was also another letter from Andrea Sand that she asked to be read.
Do you want to read those for us, Chief?
No, sir, I'll leave it up to the chair, sir.
I mean, I don't think these need to be read into the record, but
I don't know.
yeah. Did everyone get a copy and have a chance to review them?
Well, not the Bob Pear one yet, but the other one is.
Okay.
So, Chief, why don't you lead us off as to what the discussion is?
So as we all know, last month, actually prior to last month's meeting, myself and Phil and Ken Vandenberg, the highway superintendent, met with Mr. Pear, and he had a list of some safety recommendations that he was asking to be considered. And so then at that last month's meeting, you may recall, folks came by from High Street and wanted some additional input. So the list was given out or sent to all the residents. And so this month, it's my understanding that the residents were going to come back and maybe provide some additional input in terms of what they would like the trustees to do and to implement out of those suggestions, if any, for High Street. So I suppose that's where we're at right now. I will just add that Andrea Sand sent the email that I think she asked to be read, but she finally had an opportunity to review some of the suggestions, and she was in favor of them. But number 10, would the sign be placed between the telephone pole and the no parking sign and higher up than the no parking sign? That was her one question. And then just a quick synopsis of Mr. Pear's letter. He basically summarized some of the speed studies that have been done in the past, and then suggested in his last paragraph that although the number of suggestions seems high at 17, they are actually grouped around 3 main areas. Items 1 through 7 at the south end, items 9 through 12 at the midpoint, and items 13 through 17 at the north end. All of the suggestions are low-cost items that the participants of the June 19th meeting would agree would potentially make an impact on either pedestrian safety or traffic safety. Rather than enforcement, the focus of our meeting was to provide motorists with visual cues to decrease speeds and watch for pedestrians at key areas. It was agreed that any signs would be as small as possible and road markings as limited as possible while still being effective. Both Phil and Ken advised limiting new signage as it was less cost-effective than the road markings, with the exception of one at the end of the pathway from the pedestrian bridge, which would be item number 10 on your map, and one between number 34 and 36, which is item A. 34 and 36 High Street, I think he's referring to, which is item 8. And new signs would be limited to each end of the street where motorists are entering our neighborhood, one at the north end of the street where 3 signs are already located, and 4 signs at the south end near the intersection with Gulf Avenue. And hopes that everybody can improve the safety and quality of their lives and their street. So that's Mr. Pear's letter in a nutshell. So then we'll talk, I guess, to talk about some of the items on the list. I guess the input from the neighborhood residents would be, I think, the next best step.
Okay.
My suggestion.
And in the meantime, I'd make a motion to enter the letter into the record if anyone has a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
The 2 letters, I would say.
Okay. Motion to amend, to put them both into the record?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we'll put those both in the record. And then if we want to open it up for discussion, I'm guessing we have a lot of people here who has everyone here, I'm looking at this side of the room. Have people had a chance to review it? I don't really know what the action item would be that we could then take this under discussion in, so I think it'd be better just if we open it up and ask what people think of the proposed numbers, the proposed list.
Any discussion?
Any discussion? Sir?
My name is Tim Dorr. I live at 10 High Street, and I am tremendously in favor of removal of the parking spaces. I know it's a crunch on downtown for parking at busy times on the weekends, but both my neighbors at number 8 and I find it very difficult to get in and out of our driveways when there are 2 cars or sometimes a large landscaping vehicle or dump truck parked there in those spaces. And we do enjoy it in the wintertime when those spaces go away. They are seasonal because we can easily get in and out of our driveway. So I'm in favor of those, and I think the rest of the plan seems fairly reasonable and very low cost for the village, and would be in favor of this, maybe not exactly, but as it's tweaked, and the overall general plan for safety on High Street. I have little children. They're 6, and 2 of them are 3.5. And we walk up and down the street all the time, and having traffic go slowly and pay attention more to pedestrians would be really benefit to me and my family.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Barbara Kennedy and I live at 21 High, and I have probably several issues, but we'll start with this one. Number 9, relocate the existing crosswalk between 19 and 17. And when I looked at that, it seems to me the existing crosswalk goes from the end of one sidewalk to the beginning of the next across the street. So relocating it would do what? Put people on the street and then to go to a crosswalk?
So I know the one you're talking about, and it's what comes up from is it from the footbridge or the driveway behind? It starts at the end of the
gray house, and then it goes to the front of the sidewalk, beginning of the sidewalk on the other side.
It does, but that's a driveway. It's a side, but part of that sidewalk where it goes across to is also a driveway, and we felt that by moving it over the 10 feet, it would allow drivers as they're coming, or let's say they're heading from Gulf to Central, so they're headed that way on High Street. as they come around that corner, even though it's not a tremendously sharp corner, the sight lines are a little bit limited because that crosswalk is closer to the corner. By moving that crosswalk over 10 feet from the corner, it allowed better sight lines for drivers to see somebody who might be in the crosswalk at that time. That's the thought behind it.
And it takes people onto the street. You're just continue walking onto the street, which I'm sure you're not in favor of. We all do it anyway, but it's not preferable.
Tends to decrease safety, not increase it.
Okay.
The
I'm
crosswalk
just saying,
would,
that's what the thought process.
Yeah, we understand.
but the crosswalk then would go to the sidewalk, which is not handicap accessible right now, correct?
I'm not sure. Probably.
I don't think so. I mean, I think this is a curb from there to the Sands driveway.
Okay. Did you have anything else? It seemed like that might be the start of a few other.
That's one.
Okay. Is there anything else while you've got the floor?
Well, at the beginning, when you start at number 1, when you're coming across from 106 onto Cross Street, there used to be a 15-mile-an-hour sign there, and it's vanished. So, a speed limit reduction kind of sign, whatever the new speed limit is, and I thought it was 15. Putting it back would be handy.
I think the 15 is actually just recommended. I think it's true that you actually cannot lower a speed limit less than 25 in the state of Vermont.
Okay.
It can only be the yellow, that's why they're yellow, they're caution signs, so it's only, am I correct on that?
Suggestion, that's correct. We can't enforce it at 15, we can only enforce it at 25.
Okay, well, I think there's one at the other end, at Route 4 going up High Street. There is a 15, but there isn't one coming in off of 106.
Was that one of the suggestions?
I just checked that today.
It's not one, but.
Oh, trust me, I'm not saying not to do it, I'm
Saying
just
it
saying that
is.
the
Yeah, fine.
expectation should not be there, that people will actually drive 25 or 15, because I live on Slayton, and people fly through there. We had speed bumps, they still flew through there. I appreciate that the town did that, but it didn't change anything, except for like 2 days worth of it. And we have a blind
I
curve,
appreciate
unlike
that.
there's very little blind curve on that road. Ours is completely blind.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I also don't understand the recommendation to reduce the gross weight limit from 24,000 pounds to 16. What's so magical about 16?
I think the reason is, well, if you look at the High Street on, would be, I guess, the west side, where that white picket fence is.
Yeah, the road's caving in.
The road's caving in.
What is,
And so that's why. To reduce it from 24 to 16 doesn't sound like a lot, but the thought process there is it's an effort towards reducing the weights that are allowed on that street to begin with.
What's the difference in
And
the truck?
so, for instance, River Street is 16,000 pounds.
so the $16,000 will accommodate the garbage truck.
16.
There are exemptions.
16,000.
Delivery trucks like fuel, garbage, that kind of thing are exempted from the ordinance anyway. What it would prevent is, wouldn't even necessarily prevent it, but it would allow for increased enforcement, or maybe would prevent, if the drivers pay attention to the signs, trucks that are heavier than 16 going over High Street, which would hopefully reduce the impact to that street because it is at that wall kind of caving out.
Okay, what would be a typical truck that would weigh 16,000 pounds? I'm having a little trouble visualizing.
Sure. Well, there's any number of, like your larger box trucks, unless they're making a delivery. And the sign says no through trucks already, I get it. But the reason that, so your larger box truck could be 16,000 pounds or better.
Okay, all right, so we think that would be helpful. Okay.
Anyone else?
Oh, well, yeah, I guess I will. I don't, nobody's opposed to improving safety, but has it ever been demonstrated that High Street is unsafe and it needs all of this attention? And have other alternatives been considered? I mean, if you want to improve safety on High Street, you need to reduce the volume of traffic and you need to reduce the speed. None of this does that, okay? You put up a sign that says no through truck traffic. You need a sign that says no through vehicle traffic. I mean, if you really want to improve safety, improve safety. These signs won't do anything. I mean, nobody follows the signs today. Nobody enforces them today. So if you put all these up, who's going to follow them? Who's going to enforce them?
Well, we do enforce the signs. We're not there every time they're violated, I'm sure. But
Yeah.
whenever we see it, we
Yes.
enforce it.
Well, when you had, you parked a vehicle in Bob Pear's driveway, what was the effect of that? What did you observe?
I wasn't the officer that sat there, but I don't believe.
Yeah, well, it's the same thing. They put a car on Gulf Avenue. What was the result of that? We don't see any metrics that justify any of these things, or the cost, or that they're going to be effective. You know? Reduce the speed and reduce the volume of traffic. How do you do that? Well, you should put up a sign that says no through vehicle traffic. Everybody uses it to cut through to 106. Okay. He wants to decrease the parking so he can get in and out of his driveway. That only increases the speed with which people go up and down High Street. So increase parking on High Street. It'll slow it down. If you want to decrease parking, eliminate all parking on High Street. Make it 25 miles an hour and enforce it. Enforce it at 25 miles an hour. But that's never done. I don't know, so I don't understand what problem we're trying to solve, and I don't know if safety is the problem, that this solves the problem. It doesn't. My view. Thank you.
Well, and it might be helpful to know, so this was originally an item that was brought to the board about, I want to say 2 months ago. There were a number of general safety concerns raised by one individual regarding High Street. We had then asked the chief and Phil to look into it, and these were a list of items that were put forward to us last month as possible ideas that they had come up with while on a site visit. And then we had decided as a board that we wanted to make sure we heard from everyone else regarding that list before we took any action. So that was the genesis to where we are today.
Yeah, and I respectfully understand the proposals that have been put forth, but I don't really know what the real problem is, and there's no metrics to support. Are people ran over on High Street? Are people, are dogs killed, cars hit? What is the safety issue? There's no metric to support the conclusion that High Street is unsafe. Okay. If High Street is unsafe, and everything can always be made safer, okay, how do you do it? And I don't think putting up signs solves the problem. Okay. There needs to be more definitive action taken to reduce the volume of traffic and reduce the speed. My view. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I think it's a lot of signs, and my concern is that.
Sorry, can people say what was your name?
Ron, tell me.
Oh, my name, yes. I'm Ron Behrens, and I live at 21 High Street with this lovely lady, Barbara.
Oh, we just wanted it for the record. Thank you for your opinion, for your input.
Thank you.
Sorry, Ann.
Anne Marie Boyd, I live at 27 High Street. My concern with all these signs is that if all these signs, that people are going to be distracted from driving because they're looking at the signs. And I agree with Ron. I'm not sure what the safety issues are. We've lived there 29 years, raised 3 kids. It's traffic. People cut through, they use it. The cars in the street do slow people down. Unless, are you going to go through it point by point, every one of these, or how are you going to decide what's going to get done?
That's a good question.
To just, someone like the weight limit, okay, maybe that is, but are you going to go through it? How are you going to decide which of these points is going to be implemented?
I wasn't personally, and this is part of why I believe we needed to set it off for at least a month and have it sent around so that we could get this feedback. Wasn't prepared to move on any of these ideas until we'd heard from folks. There are a few of them. Anyway, so I think we would probably be taking them up individually, but hopefully this is the kind of information that'll be able to inform people making a motion to approve any of those changes to High Street.
And the map was very, very helpful,
Yeah.
the map and the list.
I'm glad to hear
Whoever
it.
came up with that, thank you. That
You're
was
welcome.
great.
Yes.
Sue Dana, 28A High Street. So this is my second meeting. I came last month because of the High Street concerns. But I find it concerning that if people on High Street didn't come to the meeting last month, there were signs already bought and they were ready to go up. So what's the decision-making process and how does that happen? There was no data to support that and no input from the residents. We found out secondhand.
I can't speak to the sign purchasing. I know that we as a board, at least I don't think would have been taking any action. Maybe I'm speaking a little too broadly here. I at least would not have been taking any action or voting on anything until we'd actually had a chance to hear from, or at least requested feedback from High Street.
Is there a decision-making process generally in town for when new signs go up? It seems like there needs to be some data, again, just kind of supporting what Ron said, in anyone's business, you need to have data to support decisions. Show us the data and then we can all consider it thoughtfully.
So I know Phil had spoken to the sign purchases last month when I think that question was raised. I can't remember exactly how he had framed the answer, but my memory is that they were going to be used elsewhere in town. And that
generic enough.
Right, they were generic enough that if they weren't wanted there, they could be used anywhere. They weren't a huge purchase. They were not a financial burden, and they were not even remotely specifically High Street needs. So they can be used anywhere.
So I think that was part of the explanation, at least as to why there were signs purchased at that time. But again, when he's back, that'd be a good question to ask him as to what the purchasing, what some of the...
Can you tell us how much they cost and how much was spent for them?
I can't.
I don't.
Can you find out and let us know?
Happy to talk to Phil about that.
Thank you.
But, and again, like I said, I think the expectation is if they're not used on High Street, they will be used in whatever the rotation with sign wear and tear is. Anyone else have any input on High Street?
Who's going to pay for the tree?
Nothing's been approved about a tree, so.
Right, yeah, I doubt that.
So nothing's been
that
approved
is
on any of
something that
these.
will remotely be
None of this has
approved.
been approved, so,
And especially considering that would actually block more vision as you were turning onto the main or coming off of the main street. Not to mention, I believe we don't even own the property that it's proposed to go on.
yeah.
Yes.
So that one is probably an easy one to not approve.
So, I think at this time, if anyone wants to make a motion regarding any of these, there are a couple of them that I'm personally open to. Most of the ones that involve, I think, number 3, improving the painting on one of the crosswalks, I think makes sense. And I think there are a couple places where the fog line ideas might make sense. I don't have any problem with trimming back the lower branches in number 13.
What, can I start? What would the benefit to a fog line on High Street be? A lot of people don't even know what a fog line is.
I was looking more at the one that's on 2. That's on.
That was a fog line.
Thematically. That one that's actually on Cross Street. I think this is a good example of how we don't have enough data yet on a lot of this, is that there are studies that show, I think fog lines have created a road condition where people will give pedestrians more space, will generally be more careful with what's on the side of the road.
Similar to having cars parked on either
Right.
side,
I
it
know
just
that
slows
the
people
fog line,
down.
though, on one side there's a sidewalk, and on the other side, there's no way to yield to pedestrians because there's nowhere to go. So
I know we had talked about this when we were looking at, when we looked at other streets that have been, where we've added them. But I think that's part of the logic. Again, I'm not the source of that idea. But maybe, I don't know, Chief, if you want to add anything about the advantages of fog lines.
On High Street, obviously on a Class 2 roadway, or Class 1 roadway, there's a lot of advantages to the fog line. I'm not sure why the fog line would be beneficial on High Street, but it's on there.
I would move to, at this point, approve making sure that there's a 15 mile per hour suggestion on both ends,
So is that
And-
number one?
Number one is not even in there, but since we know that one is missing, I think that that's a helpful sign. They're yellow, they stand out.
And so the sign would be, you'd be amending it so it was just, sorry to interrupt by the way, but
Go ahead.
so it's just 15 mile per hour suggested speed sign instead of this no through trucks or buses, legal load sign?
I think so, or do both. I'd be open to doing both.
Well,
Um,
I definitely, I wouldn't be looking, I don't want
think
to
that
be the
they-
only one speaking up here.
I
but-
would say that I think that the yellow 15 mile per hour suggested signs are very visually impactful, not a lot of small text.
Right.
I think there's usually a picture of kids playing or something as well on the sign that, if it can appeal to someone's sense of,
I can share also just that I think there are some good points about either signs being distracting for some drivers, but also I am a little concerned as to overcrowding any street with signage because I think it can create the net effect where people actually pay attention to them less.
well, you see that way, everybody taking left turns.
Right.
Too many signs.
And so I think the fewer signs you have, the more impactful they are.
So I
and
would
especially
just-
with the text.
So I would just said, to make sure that there's a 15 mile per hour yellow sign on both ends of the street, I would also move
And-
to improve the paint in number 3 on the crosswalk. And then to number 13, trim back lower branches and bushes on either side of the road to not.
If I can interject, that's been done.
They already did that.
Are
Oh,
you
it
good?
has?
Then take that
And I
back.
would appreciate that you give me first opportunity with my Copper Beach.
With
With my Copper Beach
Okay.
for trimming from a certified arborist.
Oh,
Okay.
You
we
guys
always,
do anything.
from my understanding,
Yeah, Phil Swanson.
Phil usually
said-
gives the
Yeah.
homeowner.
Okay,
first
that's
crack at
fine.
it.
It's a beautiful tree, it adds to the neighborhood, and trees and canopy will slow drivers down.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes, Barbara.
With regard to the 15-mile-an-hour sign, the one I was referring to is there used to be one at 106 as you come up Cross Street. And so that's, I think, where you want to have an impact on people to slow down, not when they're already stopped on Court Street. That doesn't make any sense. They're already stopped. But as people come zooming off of 106, there used to be, I think, unless I'm hallucinating, a 15-mile-an-hour sign there. That would be handy.
I think the hardest thing for this is it's not just one recommendation, it's a page full of recommendations. So, I mean, if there was like,
Yeah.
I think that the only one that it sounded like that more than one person was totally into was the stopping the heavyweight trucks from coming through more than 16,000 pounds, whatever that means. But I don't know if that.
So is that, Chief, is that a replacement of a sign, or is
Yeah,
that adding a new sign?
There's already signs, there are already weight signs on each end of.
So it's just
Well,
changing.
I take
that
it
sign.
back. There would be an addition to a sign, and here's why. You have a sign at Central and High, if it's approved, I'm just throwing this out. That's 24, so you'd be replacing that sign with a 16, so no net gain of a sign. Then you have a weight sign at Cross Street and Route 106, saying 24,000 pounds. The only additional sign, if the residents would want it, or the board approves it, would be an additional sign, weight sign at the bridge at Court Street and Cross Street as you travel towards High Street. And the reason for that is when delivery trucks come out of the inn, oftentimes they don't see the sign there because one doesn't exist, and they may make a left and make a shortcut to get up over High Street and avoid some traffic.
I can tell you, it doesn't happen that often.
Yeah, but that would be the
Right.
reason we put an additional sign there at the bridge for the weight restriction.
I'd like to add something.
Sorry. Yes.
I'm Cindy Kozara. I live at 38 High Street. And I'm away most of the day working, but when I am around, it has seemed to me there has been an increase in large trucks coming through High Street. I don't know how anyone could enforce it. I don't know any signs that are going to stop that, but I just wanted to share that it's been my impression. It seems like there are more than, I've been there for 22 years, and it just seems like a lot more. There's like semis go through, and a semi does not belong on a street like that. And I think of the foundations of the older homes on that street and how they must be shaking like the ones on Route 4. So it would be nice to, if there's any possible way to get that reduced, but again, it must be very difficult. So
Does a semi denote like a 62-foot tractor trailer? Or is that what?
Are you referring to the food service trailer trucks? The short bed, or the short box trailer trucks? I know there was a trailer truck up there earlier this week that was a moving truck.
Moving truck was yesterday.
We dealt with that after, I mean, they were already there before
actual
we were there.
actual
I wanted to see it
semi
leave.
trucks, actual semis, I've seen more than one go down High Street. Yeah, I don't know how they do it.
Recently, we've ticketed some of the food service trucks that made that a cut through after we warned them, but obviously we'll always keep an eye at it, and we hope maybe that extra weight sign at the bridge at Court Street rather might make a difference in that.
I mean, it's very amusing sometimes sitting on the porch and watching them go back and forth.
But given the way that street is sagging further up, that's the concern in the weight. So yeah, we definitely want to put a stop to that.
We can agree with that. Okay.
So I'm going to amend my motion.
Okay.
These are the items I move to approve this evening. I move that we change the signs at number 17, which is at the corner of Central and High, and at Cross and 106, to add no through trucks or buses, legal load limit 1,600 pounds, which is just a change of a sign. And then to add that same sign at Cross and Court. And then to make sure there is the 15-mile-per-hour sign at Cross and 106 and at Central and High. I think it's already at Central and High. It just needs to be added at Cross and 106. The other item that I would add is that we, number 3, improve the paint on crosswalk at the intersection of Golf and Cross Street.
They just redid that.
They did it?
That was on the suggestion, and I know that Ken said he was going to make it a priority for his crew.
Yeah, they did have the trees have already been done.
They're
Okay.
good.
Yeah.
Okay, then I stop.
Yeah,
So
no.
then just those two things.
Just
It must have
those-
seemed
just
sensible to
those
somebody
signs.
else.
Just those signs. All right, I will second that.
Any further discussion? Now that that's the tabled action item? Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'd like to suggest if you want to put up a sign that says no through truck traffic, why can't, and it's just a recommendation again, it's not probably enforceable, why can't you add no through vehicle traffic?
Well, I mean, very respectfully, as someone else who lives on a public road that's used as a cut through, we would all like to put no through traffic, but they are public throughways.
But you're tacitly approving that to be a throughway. Is that correct?
It is a throughway.
It is. Okay, well, then why can't trucks be on it?
Well, we
Then
can
rebuild the
wait.
road so that makes it through traffic for trucks. If it's not enforceable for vehicles, I don't understand how it can be enforceable for trucks. I don't understand. Well, maybe I don't need to, but it's okay.
I mean, there's different, we can use certain criteria. Right now we're using.
Well, and also their impact on other traffic in that area is gonna have to, it can really bottleneck the street. So, your motion is, the motion to change the sign at Central and High Street, to add the sign at
Crossing Court
Cross and Court,
and to make sure.
and to add one sign at Cross
And 106.
and 106. All those, does any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. And I think with that, we're gonna table everything else that is on this list. And that's the other, well, it sounds like 2 of these action items have already happened, the repainting and the trimming. And everything else, I think we're gonna just table for now.
Except for number 17, that one's out.
Well, it can't be in because it's not happening yet, so nothing's out until it's, but yeah.
We thank everybody for their input on this. I know it's a big street, and this is a lot of requests. There's a lot of different opinions about what's going on. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to motorcycle noise in the village. Anyone here to speak on motorcycle noise in the village?
My understanding from the last meeting was that the chief was going to come up with some kind of data on enforcement of the existing town ordinance, or village ordinance, I'm sorry.
Can you identify yourself?
My name's Roger Logan.
Okay.
That was my understanding, I could be wrong.
Yeah, what it turns out, we would have to hand search through the tickets, and there was no time frame given me specifically, but we would have to hand search, even if we went 3 months back, you're talking about 400 tickets. Hand search every single ticket to determine if the vehicle stop was in fact a motorcycle. And then you'd have to look at the ticket to see what it was stopped for. Frankly, I don't have the staff time to do that, so it wasn't completed.
Chief, do you have any anecdotal information when it comes to if officers have reported writing any of these tickets?
I do not.
Okay. Have you heard of any officer ever writing one of these tickets?
For the noise?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
So will Susan be bringing her?
I don't know what that guest on the agenda is, because certainly nobody spoke to us about bringing a guest, and we...
No,
Well,
you
the
guys
last
brought it
meeting,
up.
she said that she would bring someone in to discuss the health impacts of.
She said she could if you wanted her to, but nobody ever contacted us about such a thing.
No, I
No, we
believe
said
we
you-
said yes, we would like her
We
to
would be
bring-
open to that.
Would be open.
Okay, I'm sorry, we didn't understand that. It wasn't reflected in the minutes either. I mean, we'd be happy to bring somebody in to address it who's not us. If you want to speak to somebody who's more of an expert, I mean, we'd be happy to invite somebody. We'd have to make sure that they were able to come. I mean, clearly, it sounds from what the chief said last time and today that it's very unlikely that anybody's ever gotten a ticket for violating the town ordinance because he doesn't feel it's enforceable, which I can certainly understand. So if you're not willing to discuss using ordinances that other towns have used to address this issue just want to essentially say you have an unenforceable ordinance on the books, then I don't really know where to go from here.
I mean, do we have an ordinance? That's what I don't understand. I thought we don't have an ordinance for this.
Yes, there's a town ordinance.
But
A village
stating
ordinance,
what?
I'm sorry. The village ordinance says that, I'm paraphrasing, obviously, I'm not reading
Of
it,
course.
that you are not allowed to modify a muffler on whether a motorcycle or any other vehicle that's allowed to be on a public road that makes more noise than it would be from the stock.
That's on our books.
It's in the noise ordinance section, not the motor vehicle enforcement section. So in other words, if we were to enforce that portion of the ordinance, because it's addressed under Title V in the village ordinance, it would have to be written on a municipal ordinance violation ticket, which would be a $25 fine. If we were to enforce this same thing under the state statute, which would be essentially defective equipment, then it would be, the fine escapes me, but it would be probably over $99 for the defective equipment. So essentially, it's the same thing, but just enforced under a different statute or title. Pick your poison.
But there is legal modifications because we don't have a state level ordinance for EPA regulations on exhausts.
The state of Vermont does not have any statute that governs noise levels in terms of motor vehicle noise or motorcycle noise. It's only it only falls under the defective equipment statute in terms of a modified exhaust.
So,
Are there any towns in Vermont that have imposed additional ordinances, do you know?
Not that I'm aware of. I know that Northampton, Massachusetts, and Boston have...
And does Massachusetts have different ordinances on the books at a state level that help them enforce
I
it
don't know
at a
if the
local
state
level?
does. Boston has, and Northampton both have an ordinance or I don't know if they call them ordinances in those jurisdictions or laws or whatever, that requires that any aftermarket, that any muffler that comes on a stock motorcycle that's road legal has an EPA stamp on it that says the exhaust system has not been modified in such a way that it produces greater exhaust, and because usually when you modify an exhaust system, you also take off the catalytic converter, which of course means that it's producing more pollutants as well. And that it does not, the original equipment mufflers cannot be over, I believe it's 80 decibels, according to the EPA. Every motorcycle that comes out of the factory that can be legally sold in the US for being on the road has that stamp on the muffler, essentially. All aftermarket mufflers, which is, you go buy a new muffler for your vehicle, is supposed to have that same stamp on it, according to the EPA, according to EPA regulations. Now, the towns that, as Chief Blish pointed out, it's very hard to enforce something when you have to use scientific decibel measures on any individual vehicle, and clearly a smaller jurisdiction is going to have an even harder time with that. So the jurisdictions that have addressed this more successfully have had an ordinance that has nothing to do with the noise level per se, that if there's a reasonable reason to believe that vehicle is making more noise than it's legally allowed to be making, if it does not have that stamp, then a violation can be issued. It does not have that stamp on the muffler, whether aftermarket or original equipment. So those are the ordinances that jurisdictions are trying to do now for exactly the reason that Chief Blish pointed out, that it's very hard for an individual police officer to scientifically measure the decibels of a vehicle.
So my understanding is that this was put on for old business last month, given, I don't think there was any request for an action from any of the board members at that time. And I think we put it on under the understanding that it would provide an opportunity that if you did want to come and bring an expert to speak to some of that, or bring someone else to speak to some of those concerns when it comes to health, or enforcement of an ordinance, that it would be that opportunity to do so, and it would be on the old business. I don't think there any action item that's being sought by any board member this month.
No,
Is that correct?
I know that Mr. Khan had.
And I know he's not looking to.
No, he said I wasn't in support of any ordinance change.
So I don't think we're gonna do anything with this tonight. If you do want to bring someone, I don't think any of the board members are looking to hear from anyone else on this. But if you did want to bring someone and wanted to let us know in advance, we'd be happy to add that to the agenda as either a new or could be old business, but and add them at your request.
I really don't see any point, but thank you.
Unless someone else is requesting an expert to be brought.
No.
And with that, I think we'll move on to new business, unless someone else would like to talk about the motorcycles. New business, 15 Maple Street, request for a variance. Is anyone here to speak about that? We did get a letter.
Yeah, he said he couldn't be here. So it's, they're looking to take their parking space permit, which was 4 spaces altogether, and now split them onto either side of the property into 2 spaces on either side, which, according to the letter, a lot of the neighbors were actually quite happy with, instead of there being this one big parking space for 4 cars.
Yeah.
Did Phil leave us an opinion about this?
He did not.
It would be nice to have heard from Phil on this one.
Yeah.
Well, I know that, if this, Jeff had sent around something that he was totally fine with this. He didn't think that there was a problem.
Yeah, and I didn't see one either. I just would like to have spoken with Phil about it.
And curb cuts are his really.
Are they responsible for the curb repair? And as they build that, the town isn't I don't even know what we're asking on this. He owns that property, correct?
Right, but you have to get permission to get a curb cut.
No, I know, I
And then
understand
the
that.
town is the one that does it.
The town is the one that,
Cuts the-
so the town pays for that to get done?
So I'd be
Then I
happy.
deny it. I recommend that we don't do it because the town doesn't have any money to do that. So I suggest we ask her property owner to pay for it. If they want to make the change to a curb that's already installed. Sorry, I'm Jill Davis. I'm a member of the select board, so I'm managing the budget for roads and highways, which is very stretched and is becoming more stretched. So I'm just wondering if a resident asks to move something for their convenience, perhaps they should pay for the curb.
Because every person's allotted one curb cut per resident, per residence. How much does it cost to cut a curb? I think we have to table this.
Yeah, so here's the thing, I would like to approve this today because I generally am in favor of it and it sounds like the neighborhood is as well. Oh, Charlie.
Having recently applied for a curb cut, I think curb is a term of art. In this, it's not actually a formal curb, it is just an entranceway from a public road onto a private property.
It requires no cement work.
So there may not be a curb at all that needs to be cut. So it could just be, and it's usually at the homeowner's expense. I know when I did it, it was at my expense.
So why don't we approve it, barring that the homeowner, if there's any expense, is accrued by the homeowner?
Well, so I don't know if we can,
The only expense would be if it's granite, because that's a lot of.
Right, which is all of the kind of information that would be helpful to have someone speak to if they were either here in person to represent themselves, and if we had Phil, who'd also been spoken with them. So I'd like to approve this today. I don't see any, and I'm happy to entertain a motion.
It does say here, and pardon me, we have been working with Michael Brandt and Phil Swanson regarding all permits. I do have any improvement.
Right. But again, it doesn't go to the issue of cost, and it doesn't go to the issue of.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is if we approve it based on.
Right, but I don't know if we can approve something and say that you can only do it if you pay for it.
We do that about when people are on the green. We're willing to approve that as long as this happens.
Right, but they're normally here to also sort of talk to us about that and accept that they'll take the cost on that. They may. I'm happy to entertain a motion. I would prefer to hear from.
I think, I'd like to hear from the applicant, and I would like to hear from the town manager before I do anything.
But if someone wants to make a motion, they're welcome
I would
to.
like to make a motion to table this discussion, this item until
Till next month?
Until next month, yeah.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those against?
Nay, I guess.
So we can table that till next month. Investment Advisory Group Fund Performance Report.
So I'm Jill Davis, I'm a select board member and I'm also part of the investment advisory group. So I'm here to present to you the performance of the Woodstock Endowment Fund, of which you are managers as the select boarders. And we've promised to come to you each quarter, so you have this piece of paper to help. So in January, we made quite a lot of changes to this fund that you all approved. So we took the money away from active management and we moved it to passive management, and we put it in 3 places. We put it in an equity index fund with Vanguard, a bond index fund with Vanguard, and the Vermont Community Loan Fund. And this is a report of how that money's done in that 6 months. And basically it's no change. The market's gone down and then come up, so the net is nothing. And the fund now is worth $1.7 million. And when we made the investments, we were not sure how they were going to perform against the marketplace because we chose an equity fund that was, I forget what the word is, it's a little bit more socially responsible than the total market, so we weren't buying certain stocks, and it's done just as well as the S&P 500, so it's doing fine. So we made sensible decisions, but the fund hasn't increased because the market hasn't increased.
Have we looked back to see in that first quarter what our funds would have done had we not changed them at all?
No.
We're not looking backwards. Okay.
We made a decision, now I'm here to tell you that the decision is okay.
Because what percentage were we paying to the?
Was it like 8%? A
It
big
was hefty.
percent.
Well, it was gonna go up, it was gonna go up to 10%.
Right, yeah, right. So we've reduced our cost to something more like 1%.
You know, it was a huge discount.
Yeah.
Good job.
Does anyone else have anything for Jill?
No, sounds like nothing really happened.
Thank you for the report.
Thank you, Joe.
We're moving on from Bookstock Committee, Central Street Fire update. Chief, is that you?
Unless there's somebody here from the elevator that wants to open it up first.
Charlie.
Charlie Kimball. I spoke with Liza Degnan earlier today, and she had some information, and she thought that she might have somebody else representing her tonight, but I don't see that person.
I can tell you, I'm sorry, do you have any?
I do, if you want.
No, go ahead.
Sorry, we'll tag team. So according to what Liza said is that they are working with the insurance company to actually look at removing the building by Labor Day. They're still working towards that. They are working with partners, Guernsey Construction, to do the demolition, and also Harper Environmental is involved because there is some presence of asbestos in the building, but they're trying to retest it to see if it can be considered commercial grade or construction debris. So that is in the process. Their objective, it'll take them 2 weeks to actually demolish the building and to remove it. Which afterwards they expect to have the lot and then covered in dirt and planting grass. And making the retaining wall still along High Street there to make sure the existing retaining wall so that the grade remains the same on the sidewalk. They will maintain the fence on the street for the time that the duration of the project of removing the building until the building is fully removed. They will not block traffic on High Street, so they will be keeping one lane open, at least one lane. And let's see, did I miss anything else here? The big challenge is water and sewer going to the stone building because that currently runs through the wooden structure that was the subject of the fire. So they have to remove the building, work with the town and the Woodstock Aqueduct Company to restore water and sewer to the stone building, and then put in the topsoil and then grow the grass. There's no plans beyond that to restore that piece of land to a piece of grass at this point in time. So they're just working to get through this particular phase of the project to get to where the building is fully removed and not a hazard and not an eyesore.
Is there a basement?
There is currently a basement from what I understand, or at least a cement foundation. All of those cement walls will be removed except for the one on High Street, which will act as that retaining wall for the sidewalk. So it won't be a hole. It will be actually grass. They considered putting in hard pack, then they thought it might be an invitation to park there. They thought about putting in wood chips, but that would then be a mess onto the sidewalk. So they've, from what Liza said, they have considered many, many options for this particular property and want to pursue this path to restore it as quickly as possible to something that's not an eyesore or a danger.
I don't think so.
The only other, we met with Liza, Gurney Brothers Construction, who is the company, I think that's going to do the demo. Myself and Ken Vandenberg. Pretty much what Charlie said. They were talking about the 27th or 28th of this month, but again, it did come down to the environmental impact study from Harper's, and they suspect that there may be some asbestos in the roof, which would then drive the cost and maybe delay the demo. When it comes down, probably Central Street will go down to one lane in front of Pie, only because there's concern that, if the building comes down and God forbid a piece of it happens to fall the wrong way and it falls into traffic, it's just more of a safety concern. Gurney's didn't think it would take more than a day to bring it down. Whether or not they cart it off in a day, I don't know. But so Central Street probably wouldn't be down to one lane for more than that day when they took it down. High Street, I'm not sure, a little bit of conflict with what you mentioned on the High Street, because during the meeting, we talked about shutting High Street down for that day for the same safety reasons. As the constructed building's coming down, God forbid something happens and there's a car going up High Street and something hits the car. So it may be shut for a day. If that happens, obviously we'll give notification to all the residents on High Street with a door flyer or something like we normally do, and we'll shut it down. But school is also starting up either the 28th. So if it comes down on the 28th, it'll be a little bit more congested. I know they're hoping for the 27th. I was supposed to have heard today. I haven't heard today, so I think they're still waiting to hear themselves. And that was pretty much the same thing. That's all I have.
Any other questions? The only question I have is, Charlie, has the Economic Development Commission looked at discuss long-term planning at all for the area?
No, the EDC has not formally taken up discussion on it. We certainly are keenly interested in seeing what, if anything, is needed for help for the current owner or potential future owner. So we don't know. I don't know the role to play.
Nothing further. I think we'll move on to the tax rate, set tax rate for financial year in 2018-2019. And do we have any report from Phil as to what the need is going to be here?
What do you mean, like the tax rate? You have the...
Yeah, we have it.
You have it. It just needs to be approved so that tax bills can be sent out.
Right. Did he have anything that he wanted? Did anyone have any questions that they would have liked to have asked Phil if he was here?
Jeff Kahn did have 2 questions.
Yeah, because I know Jeff did.
I do have the answers. The reason for the increase to 0.1831 from 0.1404 is it did not include the 2017-18 tax rate, did not include the $60,000 for village insurance, and it did not include the raise that the police officers were given, and another that you had mentioned. There was a slight increase in special articles as well. That was why it had gone up.
I'd entertain a motion.
Move that we approve as submitted.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
And moving on to the East End Park update from Sustainable Woodstock.
Good evening.
Hello.
I'm Mary McVeigh, and we have a number of members from Sustainable Woodstock here this evening. Our new Sustainable Woodstock Executive Director, Michael Caduto, and a member of the East End Action Group, Ray Bourgeois, and Barbara Berry, and I. And we also brought one of our contractors, Toby Bartles, who is working as a stonemason on some of the parts of the park. So we brought the map that you've already seen, and I have a few paper copies that you can share to refresh your memory when we brought this to you last year and it was approved. So we're really just updating what it is that we're working on this season, because of course there's only so much of a season that you can do some work in the park, as well as enough funds to cover the work intended. I will say that one of the really exciting things about the park is the increase in use. Sustainable Woodstock has hosted a couple of successful events there this year and previously. This year, there was a food truck festival in May, which was wildly exciting and well attended. And in July, there was the second annual Duck Derby. So with that increased usage, we've really decided that we want to focus on some of the improvements to the park from the whole plan that would make the most sense for increased usage, for accessibility and for safety. So we've itemized 3 things in your packet to talk about briefly tonight. One of them is a pathway, which you see from, if this is the parking lot where you enter to use the park, this is the pathway, and although you can't see it in 2D, it's a bank. So a pathway that would go down from the parking lot, more or less bisecting the length of the park, down to the lawn area would be hugely helpful. Otherwise, at the moment, people need to park up here and then walk all the way down to the access road, or come in from the other side completely. So this is a priority for us, and Toby has done a diagram, a sketch, I should say, a concept sketch, and you have that in your packet also, about a series of steps going down, granite steps, I believe, is that right? Stone steps? So, let's not get carried away with the material specifications. Stone steps, with platform landings, and then another series of steps and another platform to make what is a somewhat of a considerable grade much more manageable and much safer. So that's the number 1. And maybe you want to ask questions as we go through them, or would you like me to finish all 3?
Keep going.
Yeah, Okay. All right. The next item is a gate at the top of the driveway, which would be right where Barbara's pointing. And the reason for the gate, Phil pointed out actually, a good safety concern of having vehicles just driving down there, driving onto the lawn, which we've spent thousands of dollars trying to put in and maintain, and now the town is very kindly maintaining it by mowing the lawn. So all of that effort and that money invested, we want to make sure that stays. So to discourage vehicles from driving down there, at the moment, if you've been down there recently, you see a wire rope that's just kind of strung across there. We would like to formalize it, make it usable, but also a little more aesthetically pleasing. And so we have talked to AJ Alsop, who is the landowner right next to the park. He happens to be a metal fabricator, and he has designed a concept that we've had recently presented to us, and it's a first concept drawing. It's the one that looks, it's a fold-out perhaps. Thank you. Thank you, Beth. And it's a sketch based on something that inspired him, which is a safer field print of a scene that looks actually very much like the Billings farm that you're looking at across the river. So this would be a metal gate with an artistic rendering in the middle of it, and perfectly openable. It would not be a lock gate. If, in fact, handicapped access was needed, or emergency access, because we have known from the start that that's also a fire road for the fire department to go down to the river if ever needed to pump water out of the river. So it needs to be open at all times, but having the gate there and specifying that it was emergency or handicapped only would certainly do the trick, and it would also make a nice entrance. So we thank Phil for that addition, really, to what was in the original plan. The third element to go along with the gate is actually right along the side. On the far left side, Barbara has led a team this year that has planted an edibles garden. If you want to tell them about that.
Well, we actually, most of it was donated. We planted raspberries, strawberries, and rhubarb, of which was all donated to us. And then we've also planted some wonderful high bush blueberries, 3 different varieties. And it's thriving. If you can go there and pick blueberries if you'd like to. You can pick strawberries when they're growing. But we're doing it in order, for a couple of reasons. One is to get the edibles in there and have people have access to it and be able to munch. But the other thing is that it's a great way of bringing in pollinators to the area, which is really a major theme for us, to bring pollinators into this area.
So as we've been working down there, planting and then weeding and then doing more planting, we've realized that we really need a fence along that drive. Should vehicles need to use that, we prefer they not drive into the garden. And actually, just for us, it's easier to have a clean boundary so that we know where we're dumping the chips and keeping it nice and tidy. And so we have a couple of options for fence design. You have those in your packet. And again, Toby can perhaps elaborate on how it might be constructed. But if you have stone
Is that, when you
posts-
say it's in our packet, you're referring to this one?
Yes.
Okay.
That's one of the options. And the other option has a chain between it. Like this.
So we're not talking a fence that you can't see through. We're really talking about granite posts with chain link between them. We also showed the option of the rope, but we have to say that we prefer the chain link one.
Partly for practicality.
For practicality and aesthetics, because with the chain you can also disconnect it and have access to get into it. But it does provide that barrier between them.
Okay.
So we were thinking that it would look somewhat similar to the posts that you put up along the top of the drive.
Right.
But the difference would be that we would link them with chain, perhaps, so to have some consistency. Those are the three projects that we can do this season that we think will make the most helpful impact for users at the moment and that we can afford.
Well, I've been down there a number of times, and that grade for that hillside seemed like it's not safe to go down, but it's actually incredible to see the rendering of how nice that would go down, because I was worried people tumbling down there, but this looks like it's extremely well planned of how, I mean, a toddler could go down this if it's even remotely going to be that kind of a style.
Yeah, and actually, more of it came to light in that what's been planned on this is more of a slope that cuts across the grade versus something straight down that meanders. So you have much more of an idea of cutting into the bank at a safer. It's fairly steep. That bank is. Yeah, a slip and slide would be fantastic into the river.
Future sustainable Woodstock event.
Yeah.
If anybody's done any volunteer work on the bank planting, they know it's really steep. Yeah.
Do you have an estimate for the cost that these three combined projects will be?
We do. Jack Rossi, who's not here tonight, has been pricing them out. Nothing is firm until you actually start ordering materials and so forth. But we do have, we think, enough funds already raised. And at this point, at least for this phase of the park project, we are using private money as well as foundation money. We have a grant from the Dorothy Byrne Foundation that we are able to apply to this, which is very exciting.
That's great.
So, yeah.
What would but do you know what the total cost, like ballpark?
I can't give you the three together, but
Okay.
we can get it to you if you like.
No, just, I mean, I think what is clear is that none of these would involve any cost to the village or the town.
No.
Okay. And if you were to, for whatever reason, run short funding wise, none of them would be, what would?
We would go out and try to raise money.
Okay.
And the fire department is okay with the design with the gate being there and how that was done?
Well, it actually just replicates what's already there in a different form. So we are proceeding perhaps under an assumption that needs to be explicit with the fire department, that if they're okay with what is there now, then there shouldn't be an issue with replacing with something that's just a little larger. Because right now, you have to untie a rope that is connecting this metal cable to a post.
Well, for a beautiful job that you guys have done, an insanely amazing job you guys have done, it's pretty cruddy with that rope thing going across, so.
Yeah. And the fence
I
right
think that
now.
it could be a wonderful asset to have it. I was just making sure, because it is that fire access, and
Yeah.
I personally know nothing about that
But you
need.
raise a good point, and we will check.
We will check.
Thank you.
And right now, the quote-unquote fence in front of the edible garden is pink tape.
No, it's pretty terrible.
So I'd entertain a motion if anyone wants to make one.
I would move to approve, just pending a discussion with the fire department, just to make sure they're on board.
I definitely second and approve.
Any further discussion?
Do you have a timeline for implementation?
We'd like to get started as soon as we can.
Yeah.
So part of it is working it out with contractors.
I've given October, so that's sort of a month chunk to.
As a
to-
finish date?
The end of, so the month of would be the start and end for the path.
Here's to hoping it doesn't snow early.
No, I'm pretty accustomed to work until Thanksgiving.
2
years ago,
now wouldn't
we-
be frozen yet anyway.
Yeah, that's right. As long
Could
as you
make
get
it-
your footing correct, you got plenty of warm hand warmers and clothing, and you just lose daylight.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your hard work. It's so
Yeah.
nice down there.
Onward and upward. Other business.
Do we have any other business?
Do we have any other business? Seeing none, move on to approval of minutes and review of expense warrants. Did anyone see any issues with the minutes from last meeting?
No, this is what always happens right in this car.
Okay, I move to approve minutes as presented.
Second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And on to expense warrants, or do you want to adjourn first and then?
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting and review expense warrants afterwards.
I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned.